Hello, podcast family, and welcome back to another awesome edition of the Recovery Couch. I'm so excited that you've joined us today. I'm here with a really good friend of mine, Nathan Sheets. And Nathan and I have been friends for close to a year. And we met through Southbrook Christian Church, a place that's near and dear to both of us, primarily at the men's group on Wednesday nights. And we've became familiar with each other, just kind of talking about each other's struggles and what led us to our relationship with God and how we tried to fight it on our own, all of our battles, and really just came to a point of surrender. And I had a discussion about 2 weeks ago with Nathan, and we thought, man, your testimony would really be worth sharing on the Recovery Couch. So everybody, please help me welcome my friend Nathan. Nathan, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty great today. It's been a pretty nice day. Weather's awesome, so can't complain.
So you say you're doing great today. Are there days sometimes? How long have you been in this faith journey?
Well, so I was raised in a Christian home, went to a Christian school all my life, but really the journey and, where I'm at now kind of started 2 years ago on January 1st of 2023, actually. So that's when my life kind of hit a wall and I was needing some change, and some gentlemen from church invited me to the men's group, and God really met me that year and kind of led me to where I am now.
So growing up in a Christian home, growing up in a church, what was your idea and your concept of God compared then? What was your idea and your concept of God then compared to what it is today?
So I've always believed that Jesus died for me, that I was a sinner in need of repentance, that God loved me and, he was there for me, but I never truly felt it. I've always been somebody that feels like love is conditional, where the only way that I truly feel loved and accepted is if I'm doing enough for someone else. So like if I help someone with enough things and they'll see that me helping them means I love them, so they'll love me back. So I've always lived in this way where it's like you got to do to receive. When I started this journey, I really learned that it's not about what I do, it's what He's already done for me. And that no matter what I do, how many times I screw up, how many times I feel like a failure, no matter how many times I try to be perfect, which I can't be, God's love for me doesn't change, and I'm worth just as much in my highs as I am in my lows.
So how was that different today? That understanding different from your understanding of God when you were growing up in a Christian home and going to Sunday school? What was your understanding of God then?
I think then it was more like just knowledge based. It wasn't relationship based. It was more, as Southbrook talks about, more about the religious side and religion side rather than the relationship side, instead of, the balance of the both. I always thought it was just about what I was doing. If I, prayed enough, read the Bible enough, if I, didn't lie to my parents, if I honored them, if I didn't cheat at school on homework or anything like that. As long as I was doing the right things, then God was happy with me. It wasn't about, surrendering to Him, trusting Him, and following Him as much as just checking the boxes to get into heaven.
I've heard some people describe it as, I thought, to me in my growing up, and I can relate to this illustration. I heard it described once as God was like a principal, and I didn't want to make him mad because I didn't want to get in trouble or get detention or, and I really related to that because that was my understanding of God when I was young, growing up in a church, First Church of Christ, Waynesville First Church of Christ, great people. That was just my understanding of God at that point in time. Would you say that your understanding of God as a kid was similar to that? You didn't want to disappoint Him?
Yeah, I would say it was all the way up until 2022. So 22 years old. Even though, during those years, I definitely did some things that would disappoint Him. I still, my idea of Him was I just didn't want to disappoint God. I didn't want Him to be angry at me. I didn't want Him to, not love me, or in some of those cases, it was the idea of just not being good enough for Him.
So did you build an identity, or was an identity from this world instilled in you of every relationship. If I want someone to see me, see my worth, love me, give me attention, then I have to give some sort of transactional favor and hope that they will recognize, the transaction I gave them and then transactionally give back to me. And did you see God in the same sense of the only way that I'm going to be worthy of his love is if I'm good and not bad? Was that kind of where your identity was?
Yeah. So I, growing up, I would never say no to when family members or friends asked me for help. I would try to do all the right things for people, try to, give and do gifts and things like that. Because in my mind, if I'm doing something for you, and as you said, if I'm doing something for you, then transactionally you should, show me love back. Like if I'm doing this for you because I love you, then, hopefully you recognize that and you love me back because of it. And so my relationship with God was pretty similar. It was, I'm going to church on Sundays, or I joined a Bible study, or I talked to somebody about God at the gym. So God, you should recognize this and give me what I'm worth.
And how did that shape your identity as a man? Did you ever get to a point where that started to exhaust you? Like, hey, I'm giving all this love into the world. When's it going to be reciprocated? And if you did feel that way, what was like your breaking point?
I felt that way for a lot of years. So I would try to just pour my heart out. I would give all I could. And if I didn't feel it, I would start to feel empty and worthless. And with God and my relationship with him, there were a lot of days where I felt like I wasn't measuring up to where he wanted me to be, and I wasn't good enough. So, God might love me, but I'm not good enough for him. I'm not doing enough for him. So I'm not worthy of his love. I'm not worthy to even receive it. So I don't want it. And that's when I hit that breaking point in 2022 where I hit rock bottom, and God met me at the bottom of it and brought me out of it.
So you were busy trying to earn love by good deeds and towards other people for God. And when you didn't see any sort of dividends or any sort of payoff, you started to feel hollow and empty and worthless. And and how old are you at this point in time?
I'm 25 now.
No, when you started to feel.
I mean, so my mom had an accident when I was 13 years old. And that's where really a lot of this started. When our whole family's going through like a really, really low spot. And while trying to help her, just, her being on painkillers and not really remembering some of the things she said, she would say things that just stuck with me, that made me feel like I wasn't measuring up to what I was supposed to do, even at 13 years old. And this built into my identity that, I'm going to prove her wrong. I'm going to be enough. Starting from then, as I said, I would never say no to helping somebody, even if it cost me going and hanging out with friends or doing something I wanted to do. My whole identity and my whole worth system was based on that doing and receiving. And that stuck with me from 13 to 23.
So this is something that not even you and I have really got into, and I'm going to touch on it for a little bit if you don't mind, Nathan. So your mom got into an accident?
Yeah.
A car accident?
No, she was at work, and she was a custodian, and she stepped on a trash can caster, and it fell out. It made her do the splits, and it tore all the muscles off of her hamstring.
And this was a pivotal point in your family's life, yes. I take it?
Yes. So after that, she was stuck in a hospital bed for a year. And then my dad, to be able to afford all the bills, started working anywhere from 16 to like 26 hours straight. So I would see him maybe one day a week. And I'm 13 at the time. I've got an 11-year-old brother. And having your mom stuck in a hospital bed where she can't do anything, a lot of the household responsibilities fell on my shoulders.
So you're the oldest sibling?
Yes.
Your mom and dad are both Christians?
Yes.
So your dad honors his vows and chooses to double up his labor in order to provide whatever it takes. And you're at home basically fulfilling the responsibilities of a parental figure.
Yes.
How did that affect you?
I mean, it made me grow up. It's kind of hard to go and want to hang out with friends and be able to do things when you know that your mom's going to need help getting like water or get help walking to the bathroom, or she and your brother need dinner. So you have to learn how to cook for not just yourself, but for others, and make a semi decent meal, doing laundry, trash, all the responsibilities. So it kind of just taught me how to be responsible, but it also put a lot of stress because I didn't want to disappoint her or my dad, who was working so hard. I didn't want them to feel like I wasn't doing enough for them and that things were falling apart at home.
Did you ever feel like they thought that, or did they always treat you pretty with kind of more gentle, or could you feel the pressure building in the house with your mom's injury, creating her an inability to be able to perform some of these motherly duties, these household chores? Was there more pressure in the home at this point in time, or did you not feel it? Did everybody do a pretty good job of just accepting the situation for what it was?
There was definitely a lot of pressure, it felt like, because, I have key memories of like days where it just, everything felt like it was just on my shoulders, weighing me down, the pressure of trying to remember to take care of her while taking care of my brother, while still getting schoolwork done. And at the time, I also started working with my dad 2 nights a week to try to help him catch up on his cleaning job, so that way he could get more work in so he could better support the family. So all of those pressures on some days would just build up, and it just kind of felt like I was trapped.
What about, did you sense the pressure in your dad ever, or your mom? Did you see?
Yeah.
Could you sense that in them?
Yeah, I could see on my mom's face. And I mean, remember her talking about it even to me, just openly, the like feeling down and depressed and sometimes even guilty about not being able to do things that she used to be able to do, like cooking, and which she loves to do, and doing any other motherly duties. And then with my dad never being home because he was working, when he came home exhausted, just beat, and I could see on his face the pressures of the financial responsibility of dealing with the accident while also dealing with the regular bills that we had on top of him.
So the whole family dynamic changes. It went from a family where mother and father are present, and it sounds like there was a lot of family time, more family time than post injury. There's more family time pre-injury than post-injury than injury, and your dad gets pulled away from the family, and you start to take on a role of an adult.
Yeah.
How does that define Nathan in his early teenage years, 13 years old? What does that do to you that you recognize today at 25 years old? Okay, I've had 12 years to think about how this dynamic like completely shifted me. How did this whole situation shape you into a teenage boy and a young man and now an adult?
So I think a couple of the good aspects of it are learning how to deal with the responsibilities of taking care of myself. So, going away to college wasn't that big of a deal because I had already learned how to manage myself financially and physically to be able to do the things I needed to do to survive. It taught me a lot about just having a hard work ethic in general, being someone that doesn't like to sit idle when work needs to be done. I think the downsides of it is all that pressure kind of made me feel like I have to outperform in everything I do. I especially recognize this year, and it's something that I've really been working on, is perfectionism. I never really feel like, even still, I struggle with the idea of feeling like I am enough and I'm doing enough, because I feel like I have to outperform what I did the day before every single day and constantly be the best I can be. Otherwise, I'm disappointing everyone around me if I'm not.
Do you think that mentality was shaped by the injury and the position in your family you were thrust into? Do you think it was, okay, mom and dad are going to see me and notice like how much I'm doing for this family, and that was where you're transactional? I want to earn your love. Do you attribute that to?
I would say it's the biggest contributing factor. I've always had I'd say just a fear of failing. I can remember stories from like first grade, second grade, where if I got in trouble at school or I got a bad grade, just coming home crying to my mom, like, I'm sorry I failed you. But during the accident, there were a couple key days I remember specifically that like I could trace this back to. So
Thank you for sharing all this with us. It sounds like so even in back into first grade, there was you were struggling with like I don't know some sort of identity, right? Where you just did not want to fail.
yeah.
Does that am I right? You correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. I've always struggled with like not wanting to fail, not wanting to disappoint people. Um, and I don't know if that's, something just how I was raised. I don't think my parents necessarily raised me that way. I think it's one of those things where, when you look back at your life and try to interpret key moments or just any memory you can think of, I think there's some memories that I misinterpreted as a kid, some lessons that I didn't learn properly that led me to this idea that, in order to not be a failure, I have to be perfect, or it's not okay to fail. It doesn't matter if, failing can help you learn and truly grow. It's like you can't fail, because if you do, then, your worth is nothing.
Your self-worth.
Right.
So do you think that the pressure of I can't fail, failure's not an option was external pressure, or do you think that was created internally in Nathan?
It's internal. It's all internal. I definitely struggle with self-worth like crazy. It's I just feel like I have to outperform myself every single day.
I love you for sharing that, brother, because I don't think you're alone. I think you're probably in the majority as opposed to the minority. The reason I'm asking a lot of the specific questions, Nathan, is because I've struggled with the same thing for most of my life. Like, failure is not an option. And if I do fail, then I'm going to master this task, no matter who I have to ignore, no matter what I have to do. All my time, energy, especially my focus, is going tunnel vision until I figure out how to never fail that situation again. And at a young age, I thought that was one of my superpowers. And as I get older, I realize that it's one of the least attractive qualities, especially when it comes to relationships today. So I really am thankful just for you being vulnerable enough to share that. So let's help us understand how this internal pressure that you've put on yourself to never want to fail eventually leads to, would you call it depression?
Yeah.
And when do you think that the internal pressure started to build so much that it kind of combusted, leaving you with some depression issues?
So with my mom's accident, which, as I said, it's a big pivotal moment. So a lot of things I can trace back to it. And like the buildup of that, I've struggled with depression since I was in high school. That feeling of not performing enough, feeling worthless, not being the smartest in my class, not being athletic, so I'm not good at sports, being the best at any of the hobbies that I tried to pick up, just left me feeling, worthless, even if it didn't matter in the end. And I would have anxiety attacks and like breakdowns at work. I was a custodian at night with my dad, so I would be by myself, and all those thoughts would just build up of not being worthy, and I would just have these breakdowns, and they carried on from 16 to even now, as I'm on this journey of recovery and growing in my faith and learning to trust God with it. There's still days where, the emotions hit really hard and I break down.
This episode is sponsored by Greg Swartz at Remax Victory and Affiliates. Whether you're buying your first home, selling, or making a move, Greg brings integrity, expertise, and heart to every step of the journey. He's not just a realtor, he's a trusted guide who puts your needs first. Call Greg today at 937-477-8975 and let him help you find your next home. And don't forget to tell him the Recovery Couch sent you. Yeah, eventually I want to get into how God comes into the picture and helps you with this. But take us back into that 16-year-old young man's mind, working nights with his dad, custodian work. What does one of those mental breakdowns look like?
So I Like I would be off on my own in a section of a building just cleaning, and maybe that Friday night that I was doing it, all my friends were at a football game, were hanging out, or they had plans all weekend that I couldn't do because I had to work to help with my family and do things for them. And like school wasn't, especially at 16, there were a couple classes, especially like math classes, where I was not doing very well in them. So the pressure of wanting to perform well at school and at work would build up, and I would start to feel this like I'm like not worthy of the friends I have. Like they're all going to have fun without me. Eventually they're just going to forget about me. I'm going to be alone forever. I'm not good enough for friends. I'm not good enough for my family. And I would just start to break down in tears. But as a teenager, I didn't know how to handle it very well. So to try to get myself to stop, I would try to inflict some kind of physical pain. So I would typically just punch myself anywhere I could until that spot hurt enough that I would focus more on it than crying. And I would try to sit there or hide in a spot where my dad couldn't find me or couldn't hear me, as I would just break down, bawling my eyes out for not feeling good enough. A lot of those nights resulted in me asking God to take me home, because I didn't want to be someone who took his own life, but I didn't want to be here in those moments. So I would just ask God if he could pull me out of this place.
Thank you for walking back down that road. I know that's not easy. There's been a few times in my life where I've said out loud that I wanted physical pain over the mental anguish that I was dealing with. Prison was one of those times for me. That's why I got tattooed a lot, because I could feel something and I didn't want to be in my head, and I could just, and so that's my best way to relate to what you're saying. But I don't want you to feel alone as you kind of share something so intimate, because I've been there too, bro. I've been in a point where I wanted some sort of physical pain over the mental anguish I was dealing with. So thank you for sharing that. How does that play into you're 17 years old, you're 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old? You're you get out of high school, and how do you cope with the situation that you're talking about? Does it go away?
No.
Does it continue? Where is the rock bottom you speak of? How does that happen?
So graduating high school, this kind of breakdown didn't stop entirely. Like I don't always have these breakdowns. They kind of go in cycles. The waves of depression kind of hit and go as life moves. But they carried on through college. I had a dream when I was a little kid of wanting to just work with animals my entire life. I went to school for zoology when I started. And during my first 2.5 years at college, I failed chemistry twice. I failed biology once. My grades for my major were at a 2.0, which if they go any lower, they would kick you out of college.
And for somebody that struggled with the fear of failure, this is
detrimental. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I was able to switch majors and end up completing college in 4 years, working through an entire degree in a year and a half to try and catch up. I mean, it was nothing what I expected my entire life to be. I thought my entire life was going to be working with animals. It was my dream. And, failing the classes that would get me that degree, and then also learning from people who have gotten the degree and tried, finding out that it's not the most financially stable, and dealing with a childhood that after my mom's accident, finances were something that we struggled with. It wasn't the life I was hoping to have with that kind of degree. So I had to switch majors in order to hopefully get some financial security. But in doing that, as I said, I gave up on a lifelong dream to chase financial security. And then when I graduated college, I got a job that I didn't really like. It had nothing to do with my degree. My degree just was a piece of paper that got me the position. While at this job, the first 6 months, it was considered training, but I didn't do a single project. I didn't really work on anything. They just had me sit there at my desk for 40 hours a week, collecting a paycheck, doing nothing. And as someone who, his worth comes from what he does, sitting there doing nothing all day for 6 months in a job that you never saw yourself doing, to begin with, just really attacked my mental health and my self-worth outside of work. All my friends are getting married or in relationships for the most part. So they're all busy with their significant others doing things. And I found myself feeling alone even when I was hanging out with them. I decided to turn to alcohol as my way on the weekends to kind of escape life. Um, have a pretty addictive personality as far as things I'm interested in. I tend to go 0 to 100 in everything. So I try to set rules for myself on those things I get interested in to keep me from going 0 to 100. So with alcohol in college and then after college, it was I couldn't drink on weekdays, could only drink on weekends.
These are parameters you set for yourself.
Yes, these are the standards I set for myself to try not to get too carried away in something. So I would only drink on Friday nights and Saturday nights, but work and life is dull. So on the weekends, if I'm going to go out to a bar, I'm going to spend as much money and get as drunk as possible. So that way I don't have to remember the week for just a couple hours. For a couple hours, I could just have my head be silent. And, it would work for maybe an hour or two. And then you go home, you lay in bed as you're getting the spins and all those emotions come up right back where they were. And they just hit so hard. So I was getting into this super depressed state for about 4 months, I would say, starting in September, which the panic attacks came back stronger and stronger. I would drive home from work and just silence, trying to keep from breaking down in tears, get into the turn on 675 where Wilmington Pike is, and there's that bridge. And I would think about just letting go of the wheel and pushing on my gas.
This was a recurring thought?
Yeah, it was daily for a while. And then on my birthday of 2022, after not doing anything at work for 5 months at this point, not feeling any self-worth at all, feeling like life is just a pit that, I'm not measuring up to my standards. So I'm clearly not measuring up to God's standards. I know he loves me, but I'm not doing enough for him. So I'm a waste of space here. So on my birthday, I made the vow that if life didn't get better in 6 months, I was checking out. I was done. And, obviously, if you don't make active steps for life to become better, it's not going to get better. And I made no changes after that day to make life better. And on December 31st, 2022, it was a really good day. Started out with the gym, going to a buffet with my roommate, eating tons of food, having a good time. Ended up hosting a party for New Year's Eve at the apartment. And I was like, I'm going to get drunk. I'm going to forget everything. And it's going to be a great night. I start drinking. We're playing party games. And I think I was 13, 14 shots of vodka in. I had a couple glasses of punch, which were, a handle of vodka and a gallon of punch. So it's, 50% vodka, a couple of those in.
Like a Harry Buffalo type a punch. It was like,
it was like Hawaiian punch mixed with whatever vodka.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Gotcha.
So I'm a couple glasses of that in with the shots, and I get a couple shots of whiskey in me from my bottle, and I've got about a half a bottle left. And all my friends are telling me, maybe you should stop. And I look at the bottle, and in that moment, I was like, you know what? F this. I'm ready. Hopefully this kills me. And I just backed the whole bottle.
So you said that out loud to your friends?
No, that was in my head. Okay. I sat there because I didn't want them to know that, I didn't want them to know that that's where I was that night. So my plan was after I downed that, if it wasn't enough, we had more to drink. So I would have finished it. So I said goodbye to all my friends. In my mind, it was going to be the last time. They didn't know that, but my plan was, this is it. I've had a good night. It's time to go. And I'm sitting there talking with my roommate before he goes to bed. And I don't know how the conversation started, but all of the emotions just started pouring out. And I just kept repeating, I'm worthless. I'm worthless. I'm worthless. And I ended up on the floor, just full breakdown. And my roommate grabs my hand sitting down next to me and just starts praying out loud. Lord, whatever spirits are attacking him, whatever he's going through, I just pray for your peace to overwhelm him. And I mean, instantly, I felt peace. Like this wave of calmness just hit me. And I was like, I want to be here. I don't want to go. Like I'm going to be okay. And he helped me through the night. He took care of me, made sure that I was able to get to bed. And after that night, I decided no more alcohol. Done. Never going to touch it again. I'm going to start going to church every Sunday again. I'm going to start trying to read the Bible more, try to just talk to God and figure out, what is going on in my head that led me to these points and how can I get better?
And that your first day of doing those tasks that you just mentioned was January 1st of 2020.
So it's been a little over 2 years now.
So how was that first year? How was 2023?
It was a really good year. The first couple months, of course, were rough. I joined men's group in February of that year. One of the older gentlemen in my group, actually the gentleman who invited me was my uncle's close friend. And so I saw my church on Sunday and he was like, hey, you should come check this out. I think it'd be good for you. So I went and checked it out, decided to stay. And just the amount of wisdom and knowledge that older men are pouring into you, sharing their heart with you, the advice that they gave me on how to deal with these emotions and how to begin to work through them, to know that I'm not alone in my struggles. It started to pull me out of the hole. They recommended, writing in a journal every morning, something you're grateful for, just to keep that mind of gratitude going. I ended up going to the Heart of a Warrior that year and doing that 4-day retreat, just talking to God for 4 days to try to figure things out. And that year, going into the 1 year anniversary of, that night where I was like, I'm ready to go. Like I was able to go through it with peace and just surrounded by friends and not really feel it the way it did the year before.
How long did it take you into 2023 before you opened up about the truth about that December 31st, 2022?
I would say in March of 2023 is when I opened to the men's group only. They were the only guys that knew for the longest time about my struggles and how I was dealing with it. Aside from the roommate that was with me that night, he obviously would know because he's the one who pulled me through it. But they were the only ones that truly understood. Were you afraid to ever talk to anybody about that? And then once you did talk to somebody about that, how was it received? I was definitely afraid to talk about it. I didn't want to be seen as weak, a quitter, a failure. And, once I told them the amount of love that I felt and grace that they showed me and encouragement that they gave me for opening up and being willing to share my story with them and wanting to get to the point where those kind of emotions aren't my daily life anymore.
Did you think it was going to be received with grace and love?
I'm still, I tend to share it. I'm a bit more open about it now, talking about it, because I think it's important. One, because it's a part of my story and how, God will use anyone and God can pull anyone from rock bottom and build them up and give them the life that, they're seeking after, a full life. So I'm a lot more open to sharing it, but I still get certain people about explaining it to them. Like my family, for the most part, still doesn't know about it.
This episode of The Recovery Couch is brought to you by my friend JB Davis at Performance Chrysler, Dodge Jeep Ram in Centerville. I know JB personally, and I can tell you he's the real deal. He's honest, he's dependable, and he's committed to treating people the right way. So if you're looking for a vehicle and you want to work with someone you can trust, call JB at 513-267-5225 or or stop by Performance Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Centerville and tell them the Recovery Couch sent you. Where would you say that the nerves come from? The way, or do you think it's you're worried about how it's going to get received, maybe with judgment, or is it back to that transactional? Well, if they shame me for this, like, am I going to go back into the old ways of thinking? Because that's the last thing that I could afford at this point in time. Do you think it's one or the other, or neither?
I think it's a combination of both.
Gotcha.
With my family, as far as they go, I'm afraid to, tell my mom about it because I don't want her to sit there and blame herself for it when it's, in my head and having to do with me and just the way I interpreted things or the experiences that I went through. I don't want her to feel like she failed me because then, I'd feel like a disappointment to her for making her feel that way.
So you're worried that your might hurt your mom.
Yeah. So that's why I'm hesitant to tell her. As far as like other people go, I'm sometimes nervous that they're going to look at me different. I don't want people to look at me with this sympathy, I guess. I don't want people feeling sorry for me for a costly decision that I tried to make. But I'd rather them, instead of feeling sorry for me, look at me as a success story of how God can use those things for the better. I don't need sympathy for it. It just happened, and trying to move past it towards God's glory is the bigger picture.
Amen, bro. I love that. So you get involved with Southbrook Men's Group. You share your story. It's received with grace. It's received with love, which I love to hear that. And how does that shape your understanding of God differently from the understanding of God you had from, your childhood all the way up until probably December 31st of 2022? How did getting involved with this men's group, your story being received with open arms, with grace and with love, did you start to see God different? Like,
oh yeah.
And if so, how?
Yeah. I mean, as they talk about at Southbrook in general, aside from just the men's group, we're beloved sons of the Most High God with supreme value and worth. And that's something I still have to remind myself daily, but it's that relationship aspect rather than the do and receive aspect, the transactional. It's the, Christ chose to die for me. If no one else on this earth were a sinner, he still chose to come save me. And it's that idea that it doesn't matter how far down I go or how high I go, my worth remains the same in him because I'm worthy through his grace alone rather than what I do.
You're preaching, bro. Yeah, that's good stuff. I still struggle. This is me personally right now. I know how God sees me, just like you just described. A beloved son of the Most High God with supreme worth. But I can't see myself like that some days. Do you still struggle with that sometimes?
Yeah, I've actually, since December of this year, so 2023 December, it was, reflecting on it wasn't an issue. For some reason this year in December, and especially on December 1st, it all kind of hit really hard. And I realized, looking into what I had been doing during 2024, was I was starting to fall back into the old ways of like having to do to receive, the transactional. I realized that, things were going great in the gym. I was getting pretty prideful with, I was sharing my faith there, and that's where I tend to tell others about Jesus because I'm there way too much. But I was starting to get to the point where it wasn't God working through me. It was, look, God, what I'm doing for you. And I was becoming prideful. I was becoming fearful of, what happens if I slip up again? Are people going to see me as a fake? Am I not actually where I'm supposed to be? And I realized that in December and started to deal with these emotions again. And I'm still pushing through them. The men's group talks about having nothing to hide, nothing to prove, nothing to fear. And I've definitely realized the last couple months I've been doing all three of those things again.
Trying to prove, trying to hide, and trying and fearing.
Yeah. And it's just, falling into those things, as you said, like I can know that my value and worth are in God, but fully understanding it every single day is a struggle.
And Nathan, I think that like when you sit here and say this, or when I hear somebody else talk about like you are loved no matter what, like even on your worst days and your worst moments, when I hear it, it's like, I'm like, man, that's such wisdom. And there's some days where like I'm flooded with the Holy Spirit. But the truth is we got an enemy that is going to try to take us out by using all of the negatives in our life against us. And some days he does a good job. And I don't think that we should ever have any shame or guilt in being able to admit that. I just admitted that to you on Monday. He took me out, bro. And I started feeling completely worthless. What am I doing with my life? All of that. I mean, there was nothing that he didn't attack as far as like my self-worth. And I know that God says, like, I am worthy of any calling I have for you. You are, like, Nathan, you're worthy of any calling I have for you, God would say. Or Brandon, you're worthy of any calling I have for you. But Monday, the enemy won. And for whatever reason, I believe that. Do you have any silent battles like that today where, like, you just admitted that this past December was kind of rough? Or is every day just rainbows and butterflies?
Oh, no, it's far from rainbows and butterflies. No, to be honest with you, I had a breakdown last Monday, so a little over a week and a half ago, and that was probably the third or fourth one I've had this year. Where it's just I know what God tells me I am. Like I know who I am in Christ. And as you said, the enemy will try to find little things in you and just poke at them, at your insecurities, make them grow larger than they actually are until they take over your thoughts. And the enemy has definitely been giving me those battles on quite a few days of the week. It's actually, this week has been probably the first week, I would say, of the entire year where I've been able to deal with the battles a lot easier. Usually when they happen, I just go straight to prayer. And, with my job, a new job that I have, like, I don't really talk to a whole lot of people all day. I'm kind of isolated. So I spend most of that time just trying to talk to God, especially when these kind of thoughts come out, just immediately sitting there and reminding myself, pray and ask God to reveal why these thoughts are coming up, expose the wounds of the past that you need healing from, and then also guide you through them. So I definitely still get that all the time.
What would you say today are your biggest, most used spiritual weapons that you use against the enemy whenever he tries to attack you? Prayer sounds like one of them. Is it like fellowship? What are your biggest weapons? Like, I know I need this right now. Is it solitude? Is it where do you go as far as your spiritual weapons? Like, all right, let's fight, dog.
I would say prayer is the biggest one, and then after that, fellowship. If I've spent the whole day at work isolated for the most part, and I'm praying all day, and the thoughts are still trying to break that door down, then I go and find one of my friends that's also a believer, or some of the men from men's group come in Wednesday night and just talk to them about what's going on and the help that I could use. And then I have 6 verses, I think, that I've memorized, that when these kind of thoughts start to happen, I'll try to repeat the verses to myself and then go into a prayer after it. Just asking God to make, that prayer come true for my life.
What are they?
So it's my life verse, Isaiah 40, 30, and 31, which is, even youth grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings of eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Then it's Philippians 1:21, for to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. Maya 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Matthew 6:34, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own troubles. Isaiah 6:8, then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, here am I, send me. and First Peter 5:7, which is cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you.
That's awesome, Nathan. Which one of those is your favorite?
Right now, so Isaiah 40:30-31 has been something that I've made my life for since I was, in elementary school. I think back then it was just because being someone who loves animals, the eagle on the Bible cover I bought with that verse was a big thing to me. But as I got older and truly began to understand that, in my weaknesses, and when especially after my mom's accident, on those days where I felt like I couldn't really pull myself out of them, God would be there to give me that strength. So that's a big one. Right now, I think Philippians 1:21, because it's a reminder that, I'm here on the earth for his purpose. To me to live is Christ. So I'm here to do Christ's will, to live out my life, just sharing him, being all I can be for him, because when he's done with me, that's when I'll get to go home.
Praise God. Woo! Does that get you fired up out there? I hope so. That's awesome stuff. We're going to wrap up real quick before we do. One of my favorite things about Nathan is he has shared with me his lifelong dream of being a zoologist. And since that plan has been derailed for reasons only God knows, to be honest with you, he has chosen to get a right arm sleeve of his favorite animals. I know some of you are going to be listening on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, but some of you are going to see this on YouTube. And tell them what you got on your sleeve, man. It's one of the sweeter sleeves that I know of, tattoo wise.
So I've got a zebra, which is my favorite animal. My mom says it's been my favorite animal since I was 18 months old. Just kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And then I've got an okapi right below it, which is related to the giraffe. They're really unique, cool creatures. Below that is a cobra, which is actually for my dad, because I asked him what animal I could get for him, and he was like, get me a cobra. The inside is a red panda, and then I've got a African elephant for my mom on the inside, and then I'm currently 2 sessions into a Sumatran rhino across my chest. So, and then I've got 6 big cats going on my leg here in the next year.
And whoever's doing your work does sweet work, man. Shout him out. Who's doing all that?
His name is Charlie Hicks at Bad Romance Tattoos in Beaver Creek.
Yeah.
He's a super awesome dude. Really personable and fun to be around, and makes the sessions go by fast.
And he does some seriously good work. Those are some awesome animal portraits, and portraits in general are just, whether it's human or animal, like sometimes you see some and you just don't want to tell the person the truth.
Right.
Charlie, you're doing great work. Nathan, for all the listeners out there who may be struggling with depression, alcohol, or identity, self-worth issues, what kind of advice, and I hate to use the word advice, but what kind of, just some lasting thoughts that you would like to leave with them?
I would just want to say that it does get better. No matter how dark you think life can be, God can pull you out of it. He can raise you up from the pits of hell if you'll just surrender yourself to him and let him. Reading your Bible, getting into the word, praying to him. And anyone who thinks that prayers have to be formal, they don't. It's just sitting there, letting yourself go to God, just telling him what's on your heart and how you feel, asking him for his strength, and he'll pull you through it. Sometimes the seasons are way longer than you want them to be or what you were hoping they would be, but there's always something better on the other side with Christ.
I love that. Especially sometimes we think prayer has to be formal, and I agree with you 100%. I do not think prayer has to be formal. God wants you to come to him just as you are, no matter what your jargon language is. He just wants you to seek him. And so, you don't have to sit alone in any of that mess. I've tried to, it never works, but you can give everyone and everything to God. Somehow, like Nathan told us about his story when he just thought he wanted to be taken out on December 31st of 2022, God brought a peace and a calm over him, and he's capable of that. I know that might sound crazy to some people, but that's all these other, alcohol and drugs and whatever else that's fleeting. It may numb pain, but it doesn't make anything go away. That calm and that peace only comes from the Most High God. So thank you for sharing that, brother. I want to thank Nathan so much for his ability to be vulnerable, open, and honest about how he's had some struggles in his life. And I even want to thank him even more for showing us the power of the honesty and the healing process. So I want to thank you for coming on the show, Nathan. The last thing I want to do is I want to shout out my cousin, Ashley Kreider. I told her I would. She's one of the sweetest little angels in this entire world. And when I saw her at Kroger last time, she asked me if I'd shout her out. And you better believe I will. I love you. I love your heart. You're just an awesome person. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, this is the Recovery Couch.